Hi, I'm Jill Foster here with tips and techniques using Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft products. And for today's projects, I will be featuring a trio of techniques using the Double Scoop Gelatos. And here's a look at the cards we'll be creating using those techniques. So for the first technique, I kind of call it like an inlaid stencil design. And we will be doing this with the gelato colors. And to start, I'm working on a piece of watercolor paper. Just wanted a paper that's nice and strong that will hold up to the layers that we'll be applying. And I'm going to start by applying a layer of gesso, just painting that onto the watercolor paper. I'm doing this because the gesso will create a non-porous surface that will make it very easy to blend the gelatos when doing our background. So once that's dry, I'm going to use the red cherry and also the bubblegum gelato for my background, and I'm starting there with the bubblegum color, just coloring it on, and you can see how easy I can just quickly blend that with my finger. And now I'm adding the red cherry color, and I'll blend that with my finger. I like to combine and mix and match different colors together. Just gives more variation to the background. And you can keep going over the top and blending until you're happy with the result. And the gelatos are really easy. They just come right off your hands using a baby wipe. They just wipe right off. Next, I'm going to take a stencil and I'm going to lay this across my background, and using a clean baby wipe, I'm going to carefully just rub over the stencil and remove the gelato color. So because the gelatos are water soluble and will blend with water, you can also remove them through the stencil. You could stop here and remove your stencil and have a nice bright white design. That would look really nice on a multicolor kind of rainbow background. But I decided I wanted to inlay more color into that stencil. So I'm coloring now with the Butterscotch Double Gelato. Don't worry about when you color that it's all going right into the stencil design. Just color and then use your finger to blend it into that area. Some of the excess color will be on top of the stencil, and you can just move it into the design with your finger. I wanted to brighten this up, so now I'm also taking a mango double scoop gelato and blending that in with my finger. Again, giving some variation to the color. And now is the fun part. When you remove that stencil, you'll see that you now have that nice bright yellow inlaid into your background. Now, some of that stencil did remove a little bit of that gelato color. Don't worry about that. We're going to take care of that, those kind of white spots in the end. So you can go in and just color with your gelato right on top of those and blend it again. This time I wanted to add a little metallic, so I'm using the metallic melon color and blending that in. You could leave them for a more distressed look. Or I'm also going to go in and add a little darker color, the red, just to brighten things up now that I see where my stencil design is located on the background. There you can see a little bit of that shimmer. Now I'm also going to give this a little touch of a watercolor look. So I'm just using a paintbrush and water and just blending those gelatos right up next to that stencil. And then I'm going to do the same on my stencil design, again just to give it that nice watercolor effect. And this in person really has that kind of how they do that look when you see the finished card and the finished technique. And here's another look, just a close-up of that finished card. Now for our next technique, we'll be using the Double Scoop Gelatos to do some watercoloring. So I've die cut a penny black die cut through watercolor paper, and I'm going to use that as a stencil. But first I'm going to create a palette of color using my Double Scoop Gelatos. And I really like to use the Double Scoop Gelatos for this because the large barrel makes it easy to get a really nice bit of color down onto the paper to use for the palette. So I'm just using a variety of colors. I've got red cherry, raspberry, snow cone, blueberry, I'm also going to add bubblegum, guava, green tea, lemon, and chocolate. And I'm not even sure at this point if I'm going to use all the colors. I just wanted to have a variety to choose from. And I've just got some clean water there. My cup is a little dirty, but I promise the water is pretty clean. And I'm just going to apply the water to the palette of color from the Double Scoop Gelato and then paint it through my die cut stencil. You could use just a regular stencil or any of your die cuts. It's just another way to get some more use out of those. I'm mixing different color. So I'm now adding in some of the bubblegum color, mixing that in with the red cherry, and even a little bit of raspberry down there at the bottom. Often you'll see I'm kind of just patting the color onto the design as opposed to swiping the paintbrush across. It just gives a more natural look. Now for this one, I put some water through the stencil first, and then I'm going to add the gelato color. And you'll see it just kind of spreads and moves and gives that nice watercolor effect. And going back and forth to different colors to add my shading. Here I'm just going to add that green, added water to the palette, and then painted it in. And what I love about the watercolor effect is that it doesn't need to be perfect. So if you go a little bit outside the stencil or your stencil moves or shifts on you, that's okay. It really won't matter when you finish up. Here I'm using that chocolate color and putting it into the wet painted area and letting it to blend and bleed on its own. And then I'll just lift my stencil. And I'm going to keep doing the same process, turning and shifting that die cut stencil so that I get a different look across the bottom of the card, that it looks more natural, like a field of poppies would look. Now here I'm even adding a little bit of the lemon color, mixing it with the red, and you get that nice orange. So you can mix your gelato colors through the stencil or even over on your handmade palette. The color remains nice and vibrant. So this time I even just did one flower. And I've added a few more. Now once those gelato colors are dry, they're permanent. So I can go back in like I did there and add more of a yellow to the poppy after the fact. Now here I mixed two colors of blue to get a medium color. And I'm just splattering some of that paint, and then also painting and grounding those flowers. And you'll see I'll mix some of the brown with the green, so the chocolate with the green tea gelato, and get a whole new color. So that's why it's kind of fun to make that palette off to the side. This travels real well too. If you wanted to do some painting at the park or anywhere else, you can make your palette in advance, take your stencil or your die cut, and paint while you're there. So here's another look at that finished card. Now for our third technique with the Double Scoop Gelatos, we're going to be colorizing our own ribbon to match our designs perfectly. So this is just a nice thin white ribbon. It's from May Arts. And I'm doing a nice long piece because I like when I'm doing this just to have some extra. And with that large barrel of the Double Scoop Gelato, I'm using the snow cone, and I'm just going to color right onto my ribbon. Doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to completely cover everything. So I'm just swiping that across. And then all I'm going to do is take a baby wipe and blend it. It is so easy. You could mix different colors. You could create kind of a tie-dyed effect. I'll flip it over to the back and make sure that's completely blended. And then you just leave that to dry and it's ready to go on your card and it will match your other colors perfectly. So here's another look at the 2 finished cards. Thank you so much for watching. For more ideas and inspiration, visit the Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft blog. The link is right there. And in the description, I'll list all supplies used.